The mockery. The training hall of the Galactic Academy buzzed with voices, a chorus of languages from across 100 worlds. Rows of cadets stood at attention, armor polished, weapons gleaming. To them, this place was the pinnacle of order and discipline. And then there was Lyra Hale. The human cadet stood alone at the edge of the formation, her uniform plain, her boots scuffed from long marches on real soil rather than simulated training grounds. Her presence drew smirks and laughter. Earthborn, one scaled cadet sneered. Do they still throw rocks at predators for exercise? Another chimed in. Perhaps she'll show us how to run from storms instead of fight battles. Laughter rippled through the ranks. The academy was filled with cadets bred in safety, trained with holographic simulations and cushioned by technology. To them, Earth's violent weather, dangerous wildlife, and relentless struggle for survival seemed like primitive chaos, not training. Lyra said nothing. She had learned silence was sharper than words. Her hands rested loosely at her sides, her gaze steady, as though she measured the air itself. High above on the observation platform, General Tverin watched. A veteran of too many wars, his scarred face betrayed no amusement at the mockery below. He knew better. He had fought alongside humans once, long ago, and had never forgotten. He leaned toward his adjutant, his voice low, almost reverent. "Pray," he whispered. The cadets below didn't hear him. They only saw a girl from a backwater world, too quiet, too ordinary. They thought their laughter proved her weakness. But Lyra simply lifted her hand, slow and calm, fingers flexing, an unspoken promise. And the general's eyes never left her. The Earthborn way. The cadets of the academy prided themselves on their flawless drills and memorized maneuvers. They had studied battle as if it were a puzzle with neat solutions. Lyra Hale knew better. On Earth, battle was never neat. Her mind drifted back to her childhood in the northern mountains. Storms had swept down like predators, lightning tearing apart forests, avalanches crushing villages. At 12, she had carried her younger brother through a blizzard so fierce it buried homes in minutes. That was training, living when nature demanded surrender. Her first combat lessons hadn't been with holograms, but with desperation. She remembered a pack of feral canines circling the camp, their eyes glowing in the night. Her mentor's words had guided her. Don't fight to look strong. Fight to live tomorrow. She had learned to set traps, to turn the terrain itself into a weapon, and to strike fast before fear could take hold. Now, back in the gleaming halls of the academy, she stood on the combat floor. The instructor ordered her to demonstrate stance. Aliens snickered as she shifted into position. No elegant sweep of the arm, no ceremonial flourish, just a crouched readiness, one hand raised, fingers flexed to strike or seize. Is that it? A cadet jeered. She looks like she's about to wrestle dirt. The laughter swelled again. To them, her movements were crude. But Lyra didn't move for beauty. She moved to kill if she had to. Every angle of her body whispered survival. General Tverin watched in silence, eyes narrowing. He recognized it. The stance of one who had bled, one who had endured. The other saw a primitive pose. He saw a warning. Trial of combat. The combat arena gleamed with polished stone and glowing barriers. Dozens of cadets filled the stands, eager for entertainment. Today's exercise was simple, 1 against 3. Lyra Hale stood at the center. Across from her, 3 alien cadets swaggered forward, broad-shouldered, armored, and armed with training blades. Their confidence was obvious. She won't last 30 seconds. One hissed to the crowd. Laughter followed. The signal horn blared. The aliens advanced quickly, circling. Lyra did not retreat. She let them believe she was slow, cornered prey. At the last heartbeat, she dropped low, sweeping her leg into the nearest attacker's knee. Bone cracked. He collapsed with a howl, weapon clattering away. Gasps erupted. The second cadet lunged, blade flashing. Lyra twisted aside, catching his wrist with both hands, driving her elbow into his ribs. She wrenched the weapon free, turning it against him in a single motion. He went down hard, wind knocked from his lungs. The third came in roaring with rage, swinging wildly. Lyra sidestepped, grabbed his forearm and drove him head-first into the ground. The impact shook the floor. Silence followed. It had taken less than 15 seconds. Lyra stood in the center again, her breathing calm, her hand raised once more in that same silent readiness. Blood trickled from her knuckles, but her gaze was steady, unshaken. The arena was stunned. Cadets who had mocked her training now stared as if seeing her for the first time. High above, General Tverin leaned forward, his gravel voice carrying across the hall. "This," he said, "is Earthborn training. You would do well not to laugh at it again." No one laughed now. Lessons in blood. The simulation planet was no polished arena. It was wild, dense forests, jagged rocks, and rivers that carved through valleys like wounds. Cadets were dropped in squads, each tasked with surviving and reaching extraction. Lyra Hale's squad grumbled the moment they landed. "Primitive terrain, scoffed à ton insectoire. We'll march straight through." They ignored Lyra's warning. Within an hour, they blundered into a simulated ambush. Energy bolts scorched the trees, and 2 cadets fell, their armor registering lethal hits. Panic rippled through the group. Lyra took command. "Move into cover. Spread out." They hesitated. She didn't. She dragged one cadet behind a boulder, then hurled a stone to draw enemy fire. The others finally followed, more from desperation than respect. Through the night, she taught them the Earthborn way. She showed them how to mask heat signatures with mud, how to weave branches into decoys, how to strike in sudden bursts instead of rigid formation. They were clumsy at first, but when the next ambush came, they used her tricks and survived. By the second day, the squad no longer mocked. They looked to her before moving, waiting for her hand to rise, fingers flexed, signaling attack or silence. Exhausted but alive, they reached extraction. For many, it was their first true taste of fear and of survival. As they climbed aboard the transport, one cadet whispered what the others were already thinking. "When she raises her hand, follow." General Tverin, reviewing the feed, allowed the faintest smile. The lesson had taken root. The war front. The news came swift and merciless. The Vorith Dominion had launched an assault on the border colonies. There was no time for ceremony. The cadets of the academy were deployed straight into war. Lyra Hale found herself aboard a dropship, her squad strapped in around her. Faces once filled with arrogance now carried unease. They had trained for simulations. This was real. The dropship shuddered as enemy fire lanced across the sky. Below, flames consumed the colony. The moment the ramp dropped, chaos swallowed them. Vorith soldiers storming through smoke, energy bolts tearing through defenders. The alien cadets tried to form up in perfect textbook formations. They were cut down in seconds. Their doctrines, so crisp in classrooms, unraveled in the firestorm of battle. Lyra's voice cut through the panic. "Scatter. Use the wreckage for cover." Instinctively, some obeyed. She dragged others into safety, her movements sharp and practiced. She spotted a fuel line hissing vapor and hurled a flare. The explosion tore through advancing enemies, buying them time. Her squad rallied, hearts pounding. They began to mimic her, moving unpredictably, using the battlefield itself as a weapon. They fought not like soldiers drilled in halls of glass, but like survivors clawing for another dawn. From orbit, General Tverin watched the report stream in. Entire units crumbled under Vorith assault, yet Lyra's ragtag squad held their ground, pushing back with brutal efficiency. An officer at his side muttered, "How are they lasting?" Tverin's scarred lips tightened. "Pray," he whispered again. "The enemy does not yet understand what they face." On the ground, amid fire and ruin, Lyra lifted her hand. Her squad followed without hesitation. The hand that rose. The colony burned. Towers crumbled, streets split with fire, and the Vorith came in endless waves. The cadets, no longer trainees but soldiers, dug into the ruins, weary yet unbroken. At their center stood Lyra Hale. The Vorith advanced with heavy armor, their banners tearing through the smoke. Alien cadets whispered that this was the end. Yet when Lyra stepped onto the broken wall, her silhouette framed against firelight, silence fell. She raised her hand. It was not a flourish, not a gesture born of pride. It was the same simple motion she had carried since her first dance in the training hall. Fingers flexed, steady, unyielding. Her squad understood. They surged forward, not in perfect lines, but in swift, brutal strikes. They used rubble for cover, debris as weapons. Ambushes sprung from shadows. The Vorith staggered, unprepared for prey that fought like predators. Across the battlefield, others saw it too. Cadets from a dozen species, once skeptics, once mockers, began to follow her signals. Where her hand rose, they moved. When it clenched, they struck. Her defiance spread like fire through dry grass. The Vorith charge broke. Confusion rippled through their ranks. By the time reinforcements arrived, the cadets still stood, bloodied, exhausted, but victorious. From orbit, General Tferin gave his final judgment. They mocked Earthborn training, he said, voice heavy with respect. Now they know, when a human lifts their hand, pray, it is not against you. On the ruined wall, Lyra lowered her arm at last. Around her, the survivors looked not at a cadet, but at their commander. And in that silence, after battle, Earth's lesson had been carved into the galaxy forever.